dates and interviews. The only nobody doing it better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick back, relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down with Malik Wright Morning Show. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host as always, Daniel Alameda. We got a jam-packed show, a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about. But before we do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Special thanks to Daniel and the crew for holding it down yesterday on State of the Jungle. As you guys can probably hear, I was a little under the weather, still in battling something, but you know what? We're back and we move forward. You know, I guess I want to start the conversation over in Chicago. You know, a lot of Bears fans don't know what to make of that interesting back and forth between CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams on was it Monday Night Football?
Yep.
Monday Night Football. And
Sunday night
football.
Yeah.
It was Sunday Night Football. Okay. Sunday Night Football. I thought it was Monday for some reason.
Monday was Eagles Falcons.
Yeah. But anyway, a lot of people don't know what to make about it, right? Because it seemed as if Caleb Williams was almost dismissive of CJ Stroud's advice that he was trying to give. And now, obviously, it was in the heat of the moment. You just lost. But the reason why I think it gets even a greater focus is because a guy like Caleb Williams has always been a guy that struggled with taking losses, it seems. It seems like that's a guy that's always wore his emotions a little bit on his sleeve. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were asking pretty much someone from the Bears they were speaking about the conversation they had with someone from the Bears organization and how they wanted to know sort of what was the overall feeling from Caleb Williams after losing a game. And they said everything was all good. You know, he was coachable. He learned from the moment. And, you know, he was able to take the advice and be coached and criticism as well and move forward. So, you know, it was very interesting to me just because I know that with being the first overall pick comes a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
With being a quarterback, obviously, and a potential franchise quarterback comes with a lot of pressure. But then Caleb Williams, I feel like he had a interest into the league quite like nobody else. So everything he did was magnified. So I don't know. When I watched the video, it was very it took me back a little bit. It made me feel like maybe that guy wasn't as open to criticism or feedback or as possible. And like I guess that's the PR side of things, maybe that he has to work on. You have cameras on you all the time as a quarterback. You have to be mindful about how you present yourself because anything you do, right, wrong, or indifferent, can be taken the wrong way. And I think that's something that Bears PR, Caleb's team, I think everybody needs to kind of get a hold of him and just say, hey, listen, just be mindful, listen to advice, you know, because part of it is like you are a spokesperson for a team, right? Yeah. The team does take on the quarterback's identity in a sense. So Daniel, I want to hear what your thoughts are, and then we're going to bring our guy Parker Blake in as well. But Daniel.
So when I first watched the video, I saw a guy who was pissed off and frustrated about his loss. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways is I feel like they do have a good relationship because that's what CJ Stroud said, right? And from everything we've seen, CJ Stroud is a stand-up guy, stand-up in the organization, got a great relationship with his family. Everything that people have spoke about CJ Stroud said he's a stand-up man. He is a guy who is looking out for the best and the betterment of other people. And then people on social media, you know, were trying to make the statement that CJ Stroud was trying to lil bro him, right? And say, hey, like, I'm better than you. This is what you should do. And I think that's how Caleb Williams took it, to be honest. And I think that goes to show, for right or for wrong, where Caleb Williams' mindset is, right? And that's completely okay because at the end of the day, he was in a battle with CJ Stroud. And on that field, I'm sure he wasn't even thinking CJ Stroud is my boy. You know, no, he was trying to win that game. And he knew that game was in the palm of their hands as well. So with Caleb Williams, I think it might have to be a mindset shift because it wasn't a thing of CJ Stroud was trying to low bro him. That's really what I took away, because when I watched it, like I said, it was like Caleb Williams was just dismissive of CJ Stroud, and that's not really the mindset you want to have, especially if that's one of your close friends, like CJ Stroud said. So it makes sense, where Caleb Williams' mindset was, but it really is going to be a thing of, hey, you've got to learn from that, man. You've got to learn, and you've got to see how, you know, you've got to grow from that. And at the end of the day, that's not necessarily how, you want to present yourself on a national stage. That is, at the end of the game, you got to go win, loss, or draw. You got to go shake the hand of the opposing team and just hear the other guy out. So I definitely do understand where Caleb Williams is coming from, because then hey, you may be my boy and you may have a year under your belt and you may have won Offensive Rookie of the Year, but I don't want to hear what you have to say right now. I just lost, and let me go through my process. And I think that's where Caleb Williams can deserve the criticism. And he is on the national spotlight, and he is going to get shine because he's the franchise quarterback. He's the new quarterback. He's the new guy in town. So I wouldn't be shocked, if we saw this from other quarterbacks. I'm sure it's happened in the past, but it's just magnified because it's Caleb Williams and he's on a big time stage. So with Caleb, I'm not too concerned because this is kind of what we've seen from him. We saw this in college, right? We saw he was a very emotional quarterback. Go look at his losses, his first loss at USC last season, just sitting on the sideline crying, right? Go to his mom and hug her, and that's okay. Like, I'm not bashing him for that, but that's the type of person he's already shown. So he is going to go above and beyond it, and he is going to wear his emotions on his sleeve. So that's I guess raises the question: is he showing too much emotion? Is he being a detriment to his team by this? That's the better question. I think that's the only real question that can be drawn from this. Is his actions and how he's interacting with players and how he's carrying himself, is that affecting the guys around him? And at this point, I don't know if it is. And we will continue to see. But I don't think that, right now it's necessarily having too big of an effect. But we'll see if they go on a big losing streak. We'll see if, in a year from now, and they're widely regarded as a playoff team, and they go and shit the bed a couple times, and he just walks off the field without, going and shaking the hands of the opposing head coach and the opposing quarterback. So that's something that, to be honest, I don't think it'll change. And I don't necessarily know if that's a terrible thing, but we'll see if the locker room around him has negative things to say, or if they rally behind and say, hey, this is our guy. He's our emotional leader. And if he's, pissed about losing a battle, I'm going to be pissed too. Because a team tends to take on the identity of their quarterback and their head coach. And it's either that or they completely reject the identity and that quarterback is on the outs. So we'll see.
I mean, listen, winning is contagious, but you said something that was very interesting to me. You said you didn't see anything wrong with that, So it made me think about us for a second.
Okay.
So let's say in a situation where you and me ever find each other at odds or in a competition, would you not shake my hand?
Oh, shake your hand.
Right.
Completely.
So would you take my advice that I give you?
Oh, completely. And that's where I think the difference in this is like, okay, if I put myself in Caleb Williams' shoes, right, I could see myself being pissed. And I think I would hope that I would carry myself in a better way to not just walk away from you. Cause I think that was the one thing Caleb was like, I didn't want to hear none of the shit, respectfully. Like, that's what it looked like. He said, dapped him up and walking away. That's,
He even had to say, come here, boy.
That's exactly what. And so I can see his frustration. I would hope that if we were in that same standpoint, I would at least look at you in your face and shake your hand. And I would probably say, bro, like, hey, I'm pissed off. Like, just give me a day. So I think that's where the biggest takeaway is. And like I said, my biggest concern with this is how does it make the rest of the locker room feel, and how do they, carry on, not just this incident, because I don't think this one incident, but I'm talking down the road, because I think Caleb Williams, this is going to be a repeated thing. He is going to wear his emotions on the sleeve. I wouldn't be shocked if at some point in his career, he's slamming his, helmet down. We saw him do that at USC. If he's sitting on the bench by himself, but we've seen other quarterbacks do that as well. So we'll see. I think that he could have handled himself a little bit better, but it remains to be seen how the locker room feels about his emotions.
If you're winning at the quarterback position, you can act however you want.
Completely.
If you are a winner, your team will rally behind you. Teams just want to win. It's when you're losing and you still have a mentality that you're better than everyone or you don't need to take advice, that's when things get a little dicey. I think when I look at Caleb Williams, he over exaggerates a lot of stuff. It's one loss in the NFL to a very damn good Houston Texans team. Yeah, CJ Stroud in that moment, he's trying to give you advice, whatever the case may be. Maybe that's CJ Stroud believing his own hype a little bit. Maybe, but I felt like the advice was a little bit more genuine.
It was.
I felt like the advice was more genuine. He was giving him, hey, don't take those hits, protect yourself. It's gonna get better, but we know the whole 9 yards. It's your first loss. It's not like you went 0-2.
Mhm.
It's not like you went 0-2. You won a game. You beat a team on week 1 who nobody expected y'all to beat, the Tennessee Titans, and you guys were in a game that no one expects you to be in against the Houston Texans. And you were in both of those games, and you guys played good. Like, what did you miss some throws? Sure, but those throws that he missed in week 1 are there going to be throws that he's going to make? I'm sorry, the throws that he missed in year 1 are those going to be throws he makes in year 2 or even in week 15? Yeah, 100%. No, like that's part of the growing process. My stance has not changed. We have to give these guys grace, give these guys time, right? Same way I feel about the Bryce Young situation. I don't believe anybody's story is written after 2 years, 3 years in the NFL. I think you can rebuild. If you don't believe me, look at Geno Smith. Look at that guy, right? That guy came in with a lot of hype, made ass of himself at points, and then got an opportunity to shine years later and has done so. So it's one of those things where you got to just, and I'm guilty of it as too, and we got to just keep giving these guys grace to a degree. But I do think that I do believe that Caleb Williams is a little bit over dramatic at points.
And I think my takeaway, and this could be me reading too much into it, I think he's probably a sore loser. And I think that's, we've seen it. And
you are definitely a sore loser.
That's what I think. I have credibility to discuss this. Like, I am definitely a sore loser. And I think it's fair to say that Caleb might be. And that's not a terrible thing. But at some point, you're going to have to realize, hey, you as the leader, the quarterback, you the leader as this team, are going to have people looking to you after the losses. So how do you react? But I think everything that we've seen from his losses at USC to even this, yourself in his mindset, why would he be acting like that? Probably because he's annoyed that he just lost a game. He doesn't want to hear jack shit from the opposing quarterback that just beat him. And that's a trait of a sore loser. So once again, I'm definitely a sore loser. When I lose at Madden, when I lose it, pretty much anything, I'm definitely pissed in that immediate aftermath of the game.
Let's get our guy Parker Blake to jump in on the conversation, man. I want to hear his thoughts on it before we head to some of these key matchups in week 3. Parker, my guy, welcome back.
I'm always happy to be here, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on the Caleb Williams. I guess the ending of that loss to the Texans. Like, did you take anything away from him? Being very dismissive to CJ Stroud.
I think it's one of those things, kind of like you said, it's a PR thing for the most part. I mean, as the quarterback, you got to know those eyes are going to be on you. But the thing to me, it didn't feel like, CJ was trying to sit him down and like talk to him like he was like trying to, big bro him. Like he was just, he came out there. Really, the advice he gave was just kind of like a couple words here and there. It wasn't like he was sitting him down and giving him a lecture. It's more of like to get out there, say your piece, hey, good game, whatever, and get out of there. That's totally, I'm okay with that. But it's the fact that, like, if you kind of disrespect the guy, and you got to give, CJ Stroud his flowers too, where, I mean, he went to a team that had limited success. That's why he's on that team. He went to a team that they had to rebuild. He went to a team where they had their struggles early on. So he was more providing a, hey, man, I feel you, I'm here for you type thing. And then Caleb's just going to walk after that. And that's the part that's more, it rubbed me the wrong way, because it's like there are kind of certain things you just kind of do as an athlete. And like, I mean, I was listening to a show yesterday where they were talking about, it's not like CJ didn't go out there and was trying to like jersey swap with him after the game. Like that would be totally understandable. It's like, hey, I'm not doing this. But it's like he was just trying to give him a couple words, not even necessarily of advice, but just like, hey, it gets better. It's going to be all right. Move on. And like they could have parted ways. But just more of the disrespectful, like he didn't even really dap him up. It was kind of like he threw a hand out there, was already looking away. And it's more like, just be, again, you're a professional now. This isn't even like the college game where that's going more as a profession. But you're a professional athlete, conduct yourself as a professional. That's the part that bothers me. When you're the franchise quarterback, you're expected to conduct yourself a certain way. I mean, we've seen the videos of even guys like Patrick Mahomes, like doing questionable things after the game. But again, when you're a winner, you have that track record of winning. You can act a certain way because you just hold yourself to that standard. When you're a rookie and you're coming in and it's your second game in the league, you're expected to conduct yourself a certain way. And the one thing I wanted to bring up was I wonder how dismissive he is in the building. I thought that was a good point that got brought up before I popped on here. Because when and I know you can only take what you can take from it, but when you're watching that Hard Knocks with the Bears, there was times where he's talking with his head coach, where it's like he's kind of like rolling his eyes and like I'm kind of over this conversation. And I mean, I worry about kind of the longevity of that. That's why I didn't love him as a prospect. I don't know. I don't get to participate in interviews or anything like that with him behind closed doors, but just kind of seeing the way that he conducts himself, whether it's not necessarily on camera, but in meetings with his coach. Now it's with other players that are trying to, make sure his confidence is up. They know how tough it can be out there. It's just, you have to conduct yourself professionally. And that's what bothered me the most.
Yeah, and I do think that that's a fair potential assessment to make when we do look at the team. And I think we'll see, right? We'll see how the team reacts to it at some point in the near future. And I think, Malik, right, you brought in a good point. When it's winning, it's great. You go look at what Patrick Mahomes did. It was after that Bills game where he won in his rampage about the refs. And the next couple games after that, they were winning. So it's all good. With a new franchise, with the team really pushing and saying, hey, we're going all in with this quarterback. We'll see if they hit a snag in the road and if they have a major losing streak. But overall, I'm with you on the sentiment. I think this is a wait and see. It's only week 2. And if this is the type of thing that we believe Caleb Williams will be, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of this, in the coming future.
I agree. Want to thank you guys again for spending your mornings with us. Make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. Parker, I want to talk with you, man, about the week 3 matchups, man, and get to some of them. We have a couple of games on slate that I sort of want to talk with you about. Obviously, we got the Thursday night football game tonight, Patriots at Jets. But I want to know, what are some games that you're looking at, man, that you've got your eye on that maybe are flying under the radar? I know I've got at least one that I'm looking at in particular, but I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because you have some matchups that feel very skewed, but then you have some other ones that are actually going to be really good games. I think the game that I'm most interested to watch this week is going to be that Houston-Minnesota game. I think those are going to be – that's 2 offenses that are going to be really exciting. It's a bunch of, the top coordinators in the game. You got Brian Flores, you got KOC, that's like the top game of the week, I think.
You stole my pick. Because what I'm looking at, man, is I'm wanting to see if Brian Flores, or B-Flow as they call him, if he's going to be able to make CJ Stroud look normal. He has a way of taking these quarterbacks that are, really good at dissecting defenses and making them just flustered. He just has a way. And if you look at it, it's basically the same exact thing he was doing when he was with Miami, right? Where he'd load guys up at the line of scrimmage. You have 8 guys close to the line of scrimmage, whatever the case would be. You're like, okay, who's coming from where? And then he has the most unlikely characters dropping back in coverage. And he might sit another guy on a blitz that you're otherwise, if you didn't pay attention to B-Flow's defense, you wouldn't have expected. But like literally, this is them. So like you don't know if they're blitzing or if they're not, because this is literally what they do every single play. The guys line up at the line of scrimmage. And what I love about it is you got the pass rushers, then they're all standing up, and you're like, all right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It forces you to make a decision. And then you're also forced in a situation if you're an offensive coordinator, if you ask me, and it's like, shoot, do I throw a screen here? Do I throw a screen here? Or is there a guy that's going to be trailing with my running back here? You're really put in a situation where you don't know, hey, should I leave my running back in as pass protection? Right? Listen, I love Joe Mixon. He's been a dog to me before I moved to Cincinnati. But if he winds up playing on Sunday, he's got his work cut out for him in the pass protection department. I'm very curious if the Texans would even stick with him in that spot, or would they go to their backup? Because we do know, like, for as good as a running back as Joe Mixon's been throughout his career, the one blemish on his game has been his pass protection. And I wonder if Brian Flores is going to look to exploit that, because think about that. That's, as a defensive coordinator, that's a great mindset to have. All right, we know what Joe Mixon has done, right, since he's joined Houston. He was AFC Offensive Player of the Week 1. Obviously, he tweaked his ankle week 2. But he was still out there. He still was doing damage in the pass game when called upon. he's still a threat that you have to honor and respect when he is back there. So what if they say, you know what? We're going to take Joe Mixon out of the game. We're going to force you to go to your number 2, right?
Yeah.
Because all we have to do is crowd the line of scrimmage and make you think, make you guess, make you have second thoughts or doubts that, you know, that we're blitzing your quarterback to the point where you're like, all right, we don't want to leave Joe Mixon in because he might be a liability from a pass protection standpoint. Parker, I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on it before I switch over to Daniel.
No, yeah, for sure. And like this is going to be a game that I might end up watching this all 22 like 4 times and even later throughout the year. This is going to be just a great schematic matchup. But one of the things I love about Brian Flores' defense, B-Flow's defense, is how he gets his guys ready. Again, he teaches it with 11 X's on the board, right? It's not positionally taught. It's, hey, everyone learns the defense. That way we can be more multiple. And that's where, as you get into the season, it becomes very conditional, where you can start showing pressure, and then if Mixon stays, you can bring that extra guy as a blitzer. Or if Mixon leaves, you have, you know, a guy dropping out into coverage that you might not like we talked about, you might not expect to see. So I think, you know, you can really eliminate him. You can, you know, have some cloudy brackets over, you know, Diggs or Nico, whoever you want to consider the number 1 on that offense right now. I think it's Nico personally, but I mean, you're able to do a lot. You're going to be able to put a lot of pressure and squeeze on CJ Stroud and make him, you know, start guessing, make him make decisions early and rush his process. But then again, on the other side, you know, this is a really good offensive line in Houston, and CJ Stroud's a great quarterback. I think he processes really well, and that's where I think this matchup's going to be really exciting as far as the Houston offense versus the Minnesota defense. But I mean, also don't sleep on Sam Darnold's been balling lately, and there's a lot of ball players on this Houston defense. So, I mean, like both sides of the ball. This is going to be a great game. I'm excited to see what KOC can dial up against this Houston defense that's really been a force. It was a really impressive squad last year, and it's looked solid this year. So I mean, there's a lot that goes into this game, and I could talk about it probably all day because I'm just so excited about it.
Do it.
I think it's the number 1 game of the week, man. I just think schematically they match up well because it's 2 guys in these head coaches that want to out scheme the other guy, and they want to just scheme their guys into opportunities. It's not gonna be a stock defense, like it's not gonna be a stock offense like that you see around the league with some of these guys that are either less experienced or just maybe even a little older that just don't really have that creativity in them anymore. Where it's kind of easy to be like, oh, I can guess what you're doing based on this formation, based on the film I'm getting. You have to really play good, sound offense and defense in this game and expect guys, you know, to not only do their job, but expect weird wrinkles to come at you. These are teams. I mean, you see in these, like the player-led podcasts all over YouTube and stuff, like you're talking about, oh, well, I saw this formation, so I expected this and that. You can't do that with either of these teams. You can't just look at them and take it at face value and be like, oh, well, this is what they're going to show me. This is what they're showing. This is what they typically roll to. This is what they're showing on offense. This is the concepts they like out of this. But this is where the number 1, like you can't just break it down pre-snap. You have to wait until the ball is live, and that's where it's going to get really fun. I think there's going to be a lot of explosive plays. I think there's going to be a lot of, you know, for the offense and the defense. I think there's going to be some fun turnovers. I think this is going to be what football is all about for me. It's going to be a schematic matchup that I'm just going to love to watch.
I agree.
There's a matchup. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
Daniel.
you're good.
There is a couple more matchups that I'm really looking at, and I'm not gonna dive too deep in it because I'm gonna get Daniel in here to talk to.
No, you're good.
But Lions Cardinals is a game that I'm looking at. I usually don't really care to watch Cardinals football, but the way they looked last week, man, and then you put that together with the Lions falling short and a lot of people now being low on the Lions, that's a game I'm paying attention to. Ravens at the Dallas Cowboys. Both teams came off of losses last week. The Cowboys loss a little bit more emphatic than the Ravens loss. Ravens are fighting for everything right now, but the Cowboys also, they're a team that always tends to respond, and it's in Dallas. Could you imagine if the Ravens beat Dallas in Dallas? That would literally set the NFL world ablaze in terms of Jerry World, and there would be so much criticism and thoughts coming out of that game. But
if the Ravens lose,
or if the Ravens listen, the Ravens could be 0-3 after this week. Yeah. I mean, I'm rooting for the Cowboys. We have to be honest with you. I'm rooting for Cowboys. We, you know, kick the side a little bit, but you know, it's a good game. It's a game, a sneaky game that no one's talking about is the Atlanta Falcons versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, listen, here's what my prediction is for, you know, when it comes to that game. I think that the Falcons defense is going to play so good this game, but I just don't know if that Falcons offense is going to be able to answer the challenge. Yeah. I really feel like it's gonna be a thing where, Jesse Bates and Patrick Mahomes is such a good matchup, right? Free safety, that has had a lot of success in his career against Patrick Mahomes. I think that this defense is going to be able to do a lot of good things against this Chiefs offense. There are questions that are starting to rise. I'm starting to hear the W word being referenced when we talk about Travis Kelce. If you don't know what that word is, that means washed. People are starting to say that a little bit. Pacheco was not obviously active because he had a fracture. You got to ask yourself, man, is it looking a little bleak for the Kansas City Chiefs against the Falcons this week? Because guess what? The Falcons have the weapons to give the Chiefs hell.
Yeah.
They certainly do. I'm looking at the Chargers versus the Steelers game. And guess what? Here's another game I'm looking at. Hype versus hype. Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson versus Caleb Williams. I think we're going to be in for a high match. That wouldn't shock me if that was one of the highest scoring games of the week. I think both quarterbacks will look to let it fly. But Daniel, what say you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great matchups, and I think there's a lot of interesting things. Like when I look at the Vikings, first off, I just think the personnel is elite. I mean, Jonathan Grenard's a guy who's underrated with the Texans. Now he's on the Vikings. Rookie Dallas Turner's looked exceptional. Alexander Van Ginkel. So much on that Vikings defense has been elite. And then all around the league, I mean, some of the games you discussed, like the Lions, for example, I want to see Ken Jamison Williams keep this up. Like he's a guy right now, he's a top 5 fantasy guy. And he's performed better than Amon-Ra St. Brown, except last week he obviously got peppered with targets. But can he keep it up? Is he on the upper echelon of guys? Like, is he in that Chris Olave tier now? Is he in that Garrett Wilson tier now? So I'm excited to see that. And then Kyler Murray. Can Kyler Murray keep his MVP candidacy going? So there's a lot of great matchups from the league I'm excited for. Even, like you said, the Chiefs versus Falcons game, that's prime time. Can Kirk Cousins keep up his primetime streak after last week? And then another one, and obviously I want to hear Parker's thoughts on these. The Eagles versus Saints is one that I'm really looking at. Right now, the Saints are big-time favorites. They're 3-point favorites. And I understand after the past 2 weeks, their offense has looked exceptional. But are we buying the hype yet? So, Parker, all around, what was your thoughts on some of the games that
Before
Malik
Parker
discussed?
jumps in, let me just say this really quickly. Because I'm going to lose this train of thought, Parker.
No, you're good.
Who's the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints?
It's Derek Carr.
I've seen Derek Carr look like a goddamn MVP candidate for like 9 weeks and then fall off of a cliff.
Yeah.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't put the blame on you. No. Derek Carr is still who he is. This is just teams waiting to get enough film out, not having enough film out on the Saints and seeing what happens. But I'll give one credit to one person on that office, Rashid Shaheed, man. That guy seems like he hits the end zone every week. And but no, Derek Carr is still who he is. He hasn't unlocked this new chapter of his football career. I don't believe that. I still believe he's a stuck in the mud quarterback. But Parker,
Who leads NFL passing touchdowns?
That's fine. It's also you just said it yourself. It's week 2.
Yeah. Their offense.
You love mediocre. You love mediocre.
The Jets, the Saints.
Like this guy just loves mediocrity. You just love the mediocre quarterback.
I think, and this we'll get to. Parker.
Maybe it's because you look like him.
That's I do not look like.
Maybe
I don't
it's because
have
you
any
look like
facial
Derek
hair.
Carr. A little stubble.
I like a great offensive scheme with a game manager quarterback. I love the Jimmy Garoppolos. I love the Tuas. I love the Derek Carrs because that's a realistic option if you don't have a superstar quarterback. So Clint Kubiak and that offense I really love. And Derek Carr, we've seen it before. But once again, also it helps when you have a very solid defense and the weapons are elite there.
I guess that makes sense because Tom Brady, for a good portion of his career, was a game manager with an elite offensive scheme and weapons around. So I guess that makes sense because you did grow up a Patriots fan. But Parker, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, you don't got to talk to me. I've always said that I'm the best at evaluating backup quarterbacks. I was a Brock Purdy #1 in the class type guy, which that aged well because that class ended up stinking. I don't think it was him outperforming the other guys, but I I got to give some credit to that. I also love me a good game manager. I think it's the best way to go because you can lean on your defense. But that's a conversation for another time. I do want to talk about some of these trench matchups. Go back to my roots. You know me. I love the offensive line. I love seeing these elite matchups. I got to start with LA and Pittsburgh. Watching Joe Alt, Zion Johnson, Rashawn Slater get out there and face this Steelers defense where they've been able to win games without scoring touchdowns because that's just what the Steelers do. I don't think the Chargers are going to give them the chance to do that. I think the Chargers are really going to push this Pittsburgh team. It's going to be a good opportunity for us to see what the Steelers team is going to look like down the stretch. And I also want to talk about that Cardinals game. I'm excited to not only see Paris Johnson Jr. match up with Aiden Hutchinson a couple times, who's been on an absolute tear. Aiden Hutchinson looks like a monster. And I know he has, but it feels like he's almost hitting that next gear where, you're ramping up and you're starting to get comfortable in the league. You're able to do some different stuff. You're able to play a little more loose. That's just going to be a great matchup because I think this Cardinals unit actually doesn't look too bad. I think it's looked pretty good this year. And then the Baltimore and Dallas game is like, I think you guys kind of already hinted to it, but it's like the big question mark game, not necessarily what's going to happen, but it's two teams that are bigger in the media that people are really high on normally, whether it's you want to blame the big market, you want to blame the big name players, whatever you want to, account to that. But it's two teams that are also fighting for their lives, it feels like. It's two teams that they've shown early struggles. And then I feel like they also match up pretty well where this Ravens offensive line, whether it's due or not, the stat heads always love the Ravens offensive line. They always say they perform well. I haven't seen that this year, but they're still getting the same grades, same ratings. And so it's, facing off against this, Cowboys defensive line, which historically is always great. They have some nice players on that, defensive line. And that's going to be an interesting game for me. But the one I want to talk about the most is this Falcons and Kansas City game. I feel like this Falcons offensive line looks like a really solid unit. I think Bijan's finally hitting his stride. They're finally giving him the volume that he deserves. And I think, seeing how the Bengals were able to handle the Kansas City Chiefs up front and what that looked like, not necessarily handle them, I guess, but what that looked like, I think the Falcons have a much better unit. I think schematically they're able to put themselves in much more favorable positions, especially in the run game. And like I've always talked about, if you feel like you're outmatched in a game, whether, you never want to go into a game where it's like, oh, this team is better than us. But if you feel like you're going to be in a dogfight, you want to control the clock. You want to keep the ball on the ground. Like I talked about with the Bengals last week against the Chiefs, where it's if you can win that time of possession and you can win in the trenches, it's all going to fall in line with you. And then you have Jesse Bates on the other side that's going to be able to make some plays. I really feel like they're going to do a good job of neutralizing Chris Jones with that run game. I feel like they're going to do a good job of, attacking George Karlaftis and using his limited ability in the run game and just letting Bijan. I feel like, if you're a fantasy owner, you're a gambler. This is a big Bijan week, in my opinion. I think it's either going to be Bijan's because he hasn't scored yet this year, I don't think, right? He hasn't found the end zone. Yeah. So I feel like, not only is he, due as far as, gamblers like to say, us D-gens, I almost said you D-gens. I'm part of the crowd, don't worry. But, you say he's due, but it's also, this is a great week because I think they're going to have to lean on a guy like Bijan Robinson. They're going to have to lean on this offensive line. And then you're going to have Kirk O'Chain's out there, slinging it around. But I think Jesse Bates is going to have a couple big plays, but I think the Falcons are going to do their best to try and control that game. That's probably the most interesting matchup, in my opinion, just because I think the Falcons are actually a team that's poised to really handle what the Chiefs can bring. And I don't disagree with you at all, Malik. I think the Chiefs are teetering. I know there was a lot of talk this offseason that I kept trying to bring up. People talk about how stacked this roster is, and they have good players, and they're high-level talent. But outside of that high-level talent, what do they have? They have a guy in Kingsley Suamataia that got benched for the final drive of the game, which is a questionable call on its own. But you have a lot of questions on your offensive line outside of your interior, and you have a lot of high-level pass rushers coming at you just in the NFL in general. And then defensively, I think you have holes. I think you have guys that are able to make plays, and then I think this roster is teetering. If Travis Kelce really decides to step away from the league, I don't think Mahomes is going to retire with him. So, what does this Chiefs team look like? Travis Kelce, I think, had single-digit touchdowns in 2023. So I don't understand necessarily where this Chiefs offense goes if Kelce's going to be limited or be restricted based on defensive scheme. If Pacheco's out of the game, are you really – I like Still coming out because that was a fun story. I think he's a fun little player, but I don't think he's he's not a number one type guy. He's not going to be – he shouldn't be a significant contributor in your offense. I have a lot of questions about this Chiefs team already, and now if you start catching the injury bug or defenses are able to play you well enough, this this Falcons team, I mean, I think the Chiefs are on upset alert this week, man.
And let me just say this. I think this is the game Zach Robinson needs, offensive coordinator. I think this is the one I'm penciling in, to be honest. And I hate to say it's a 1 week thing, but this is your time to shine against Steve Spagnuolo. Last week and even the past 2 weeks, I've been concerned. Go look at the game against the Eagles. They should have lost that game. In the second half, they ran the ball a grand amount of 3 times to Bijan Robinson. And that's what would concern me against the Chiefs is, hey, you got to stick to your game plan. And if you go out there and at home, Sunday Night Football, you beat the Chiefs, this is the statement game the Falcons need to put the AFC or the NFC South on notice, to put the NFC on notice. Zach Robinson, this new staff, you got 2 weeks under your belt. Go out there, Sunday Night Football, put the league on notice, and this would be the big statement game. And it really keys in Zach Robinson for me.
Like you said, you got to stick to the game plan, man.
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought Daniel was going somewhere else with that. I was trying to pull it up. But as always, I don't get enough time. Thanks, Daniel.
Wait, no.
No. If you look at it,
filibuster.
Yeah, but if you look at it, I haven't just been impressed with Steve Spagnuolo's defense, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay.
And this is where I think that the Falcons can take advantage of some stuff, because exactly how I said what I said last week. Let's follow some trends real quick, right? Isaiah Likely went off, right, against the Kansas City Chiefs, 100 some odd yards. Touchdown or 2.
I know where you're going.
Mike Gesicki went off, right, for almost I think
91.
6 catches, like 90 yards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kyle Pitts.
It's that time.
Is this a Kyle Pitts game? Because guess what? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. The numbers are suggesting to me this year that the Chiefs have a issue covering tight ends. The Kansas City Chiefs have a tight end problem. They have a problem covering tight ends.
Thanks, Nick Bolton.
And I think that if Zach Robinson is the play caller we hope he will continue to grow into, I would hope that he would look at the analytics. I hope he would look at the stats and look at what has transpired at least the first 2 weeks of the season. But I've seen enough to say this. I am going to start every tight end going forward against this Kansas City Chiefs defense.
Yeah.
I think that they are willing to ride with Trent McDuffie going up against your number 1 receiver, and obviously the cloud coverage to try to make life a little bit more difficult for that number 1 receiver. But I think there's going to be a real opportunity for you to exploit this Chiefs defense with your tight ends. I've seen enough. Look, that's just where I stand, Parker. I don't know if you have any other takes on that, but I think that if you are a tight end and you're facing the Kansas City Chiefs, you're licking your chops.
Well, that's where you have a guy like Jaden Hicks just running the bench. I think that guy could really help you in that realm, but they don't seem to care. And that's where, again, I feel like this Falcons team, if anybody in the league is poised to just pick apart this Chiefs defense because they're built to beat all the things that the Chiefs struggle with, right? They have a guy not only in Kyle Pitts, but a guy in Kirk Cousins that has said, "Oh, I'm gonna deliver volume," and historically has delivered volume to his tight ends. He loves using those tight ends because teams don't care about them. Teams want to lock up your Drake London. They want to stop your run game. Yeah. They'll let your tight end go all over the field. And when you have a dynamic player like Kyle Pitts, I mean, what do you expect this team to do? I mean, if they're living the run game, living the play action game, I think Spags could be in hell for like at least the first half of this game, man. He could be, all over the place. Then what are you going to do? You're going to overcompensate for a tight end, and then you're going to let Drake London run all over you? I mean, I really feel like this Falcons offense, if anybody in the league right now is built to beat the Chiefs, it's going to be this Falcons offense, as funny as it is to say, because they just happen to be a bad matchup for them. You talk about it in fighting all the time, where sometimes you just get 2 styles that don't line up well. And it's like, oh, this is a terrible matchup for so-and-so. I feel like this is just a case of that, where you're going to let Kyle Pitts run all over you because you're comfortable doing that. But Kyle Pitts is also a guy that's not afraid to go for 150 yards on you.
Yeah, styles make fights, and I'm very confident what they're going to do, similar to what you said. You got Drake London on the outside. They'll put McDuffie on him. And I think you got a 1-2 punch in Bijan Algier to dominate the Chiefs, get the screen game going. And then, like you said, Kyle Pitts, he's only at 26 yards and 20 yards. This is the game he needs to have. And this is as perfect of a matchup he needs. Yeah. So Kyle Pitts, clock is on for you, buddy, this week.
Yeah. And Kyle Pitts is a big week. But Parker, my man, thank you so much for joining us for another episode, man, of the Sit Down Malik Wright Morning Show, man. We appreciate that you're part of the show, man. We'll be looking forward to talking more ball with you on Tuesday. On Tuesday,
Yes,
we'll be
sir.
able to chop things up, and maybe I'll see if I can actually get you on the recap show maybe this week or something like that, although it'll be a pretty late one. I appreciate you, my man, and make sure you guys follow Parker and all the amazing work he does for TWSN and other outlets as well. His handle is right below him, but also in the description. Parker, we'll see you next week, my man.
Hey, always a pleasure, man. Looking forward to talking to you on Tuesday. Take it easy.
Yes, sir, brother. And again, we want to thank Parker so much for joining us for the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. And as one guest exit, another one enters. It's time to talk fantasy football and get you all caught up for tonight. Obviously, tonight is the Thursday night football matchup between the Jets and the Patriots. And there's nobody better to turn to right now than our guy, Michael O'Hara, TWSN fantasy guy. So, Mike, what's going on? How we doing?
How we doing, Malik? I'm excited to talk some Thursday night football. It's not as good of a matchup as we had last week. Obviously, the last week it did disappoint a little bit, but I mean, we're here. We're gonna be here every Thursday to get people prepped.
Yes, sir, man. And I'm really curious to hear what you think. Obviously, you know, I'm not doing any fantasy football leagues this year. As we talk about every week, I retired for being a GOAT. But I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on some of these matchups, some of these guys that might be going under the radar. I'll kick this over to you because I know Daniel probably has some questions for you because, you know, Daniel is very deeply rooted in fantasy football.
I am
this
right
year.
now, man. I'm trying and I'm struggling a little bit.
But maybe Mike could give you some advice that I couldn't give you.
All right. Yeah. Mike, let's start off with Thursday night football. Talk to us just all around, you know, about the game. And specifically also another thing we could touch on is the running backs, right? There's a lot of conversation. Braylon Allen had a huge game last week. Are you concerned about that at all, you know, for Breece Hall owners and just overall what's your thoughts Thursday night football?
Yeah, so starting off with the running backs, no, I'm not concerned about Breece Hall. We always knew that this was going to be an offense that runs through the running game and Breece Hall specifically. Even with Braylon Allen mixing in, Breece Hall still saw 20 touches. That's like not anything. He's going to continue to see that whether or not Braylon Allen mixes in more or not. It's not a factor of whether or not he's siphoning touches away from Breece Hall. It's just that the Jets might just be running more plays through their running backs than through Aaron Rodgers' arm. So I'm not worried about Breece Hall in that capacity at all. If anything, I'm excited about Braylon Allen because he was pegged as one of the like premier handcuff stash types in fantasy football this season because we don't need to get into a whole spiel about backup running backs here, but not every backup running back is created equally. Some come in and take on a bell cow role, while others come in and they remain in a committee. And I believe that Braylon Allen is the type who would come in and take on a bell cow role if something were to happen to Breece Hall. So I'm just excited about him in the sense that he should be stashed on benches. And if something unfortunately does happen to Hall, he's going to be a weekly RB2 at worst. So that in terms of the running backs, Breece Hall must start. Braylon Allen, you can't start him unless you're absolutely desperate. I mean, that production was propped up by those 2 touchdowns, but he's still a great stash on benches.
And once again, if you guys have any questions, fantasy football related, make sure you guys drop them down below. Garrett Wilson, let's have this conversation real quick, Michael. Are you concerned about Garrett Wilson? And overall, what's your thoughts? Is he a guy you would be trading for in leagues? Because throughout this year so far, I mean, 5 receptions, 6 receptions, less than 60 yards a game. What's your thoughts on Garrett?
Yeah, so I'm not panicking about Garrett Wilson at all. He is, like, from a metrics-based perspective, he is still one of the few alpha receivers in the NFL. He's being targeted on 30% of his routes, and he's accounted for 45% of the Jets' air yards. And he's being targeted as the first read on 35% of his targets as well. So those numbers, when you're crossing 30% on those thresholds for air yards, target share, all that, that's like the alpha tier. And there's very few receivers who can sustain that throughout across a full season. And Garrett Wilson is one of those guys who can and will do that. So I'm very confident that he's going to start packing the box score here soon. I mean, obviously the touchdown numbers play a big role on your fantasy production, and those haven't exactly gone his way yet. I mean, we saw Breece Hall with an immaculate receiving touchdown last week, and then obviously a couple go to Braylon Allen there. So I'm still very confident in Garrett Wilson as a fantasy asset. He does draw a tough matchup against Christian Gonzalez this week. He is one of those guys who I think is going to. We weren't treated to a full season of Gonzalez last year, but I think he is one of those guys in his second season who is going to ascend into that tier of cornerbacks who, when your wide receiver one is facing off against him, it's like not very pleasant. You're going to be concerned about what his outlook looks like. But for the time being, Garrett Wilson, a must start. You can't reasonably bench him. He is the engine of this passing offense.
Completely. And let's switch over to the Patriots side of things, right? There's a couple things that, the receivers are not really start worthy. A guy that's gotten a little bit more run is Antonio Gibson, but overall, let's talk about their backfield. Ramondre Stevenson, is he a must start running back one for you? And also, is there any value with Antonio Gibson?
Antonio Gibson, another guy who I throughout the offseason, I thought he was just going to be an annoying thorn in Ramondre Stevenson's side, just because he was going to be taking away some of that passing work that's ever valuable for running backs, but he really hasn't been. Ramondre Stevenson, he currently leads or is second in weighted opportunities per game, and that just like it kind of weights targets versus carries, because targets are far more valuable and conducive to scoring fantasy points for running backs. He's only behind Saquon Barkley in weighted opportunities per game. He's getting absolutely fed the rock, and it's not even that he's getting fed the rock. He is looking really, really good with it. Here's a great stat that I saw the other day. Ramondre Stevenson currently has 201 total rushing yards, and he has 205 rushing yards after contact. He's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage on 61% of his carries, which leads the league in the NFL. So he's getting touched behind the line of scrimmage almost every single time, or not on the vast majority of his carries. And so he's turning that offensive line play into yardage and production, which is honestly just a testament to his talent. So I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson as a confident RB2 this week, somewhere in that RB15 range, RB16 range. And I think you just have to. He's got an absolutely massive workload. Gibson will get touches here and there, but I mean, there's very few running backs who take 100% of the touches in their backfield. I mean, that just isn't something that happens anymore in the modern NFL. So I'm feeling comfortable starting him in the RB2 range. We've seen a couple of running backs, namely Jordan Mason. I mean, obviously that's a very different and more productive rushing attack than what we have in New England. But I mean, still, you got to follow the workload and start Ramondre Stevenson confidently this week.
Completely. And Mike, we got some questions for you, man. I've even got some of my own for my own fantasy team, but our guy Gary Jellison, and this goes into kind of overall into defense, but he says, would the Jets defense be a sneaky start this week? And then to carry on to that, what, other defensive matchups you really love for this week?
Yeah, I think you can confidently start the Jets defense this week as well. This is going to be a slow, methodical matchup. The Jets offense and both the Patriots offense are just two of the slower offenses in the NFL. I mean, we've seen that historically with Aaron Rodgers going back to his time with the Green Bay Packers. He winds down that clock. He's making audibles at the line of scrimmage. He's more than willing to take all 40 seconds off the play clock. And New England this year, I believe, I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe they ranked 29th in terms of pace of play. So this is just going to be a defensive-minded matchup. I don't think people are giving enough credit to this Patriots defense just yet. They're very strong, and this Jets offense has looked suspect at times. So I believe that this is going to be a defensive-minded matchup 100%. That moves pretty slow, and I know the over-under is set rather low for this matchup. So I think you can start both defenses in this game. But in terms of other defenses to start this week, it's another one where I think you can reasonably start the defense on both sides of the matchup. It is Los Angeles and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is one of those defenses looking like that you can start them regardless of who they're playing. Like even if they're playing one of the upper echelon offenses in the league, you can confidently start them. They've got TJ Watt, who's just going to wreak havoc in the backfield. Joey Porter Jr. is another one of those ascending young corners in the NFL. So I think that's a defense that you can start almost every week. And the Chargers this week, I believe you can start them against the Patriots, or against the Steelers rather, because I mean the Steelers, they win games kicking field goals and playing good defense. They're not going to boat race anyone. They're not going to score 3 touchdowns in a game. I mean, maybe they will, but at this point, I'm not confident that they're going to find the end zone more than once or twice in a game. So I think you can confidently start the defense on both sides of that matchup.
Completely. And we got another good question from our guy, James Angelis. He said, looking at the Chiefs running backs, he said, you guys think that Carson Steele is going to do anything since Pacheco is down? And also, are you buying into the Kareem Hunt hype? They just signed him. Potentially, Andy Reid said he could be playing on Sunday Night Football. What's your thoughts about the Chiefs backfield without Isaiah Pacheco?
Yeah, so starting with Kareem Hunt, that'll be short and sweet. The people who are scrambling to pick up Kareem Hunt and are freaking out about what he's going to do for this team are the same people who are scrambling to pick up Dalvin Cook. This is a middle-aged, old running back who is well past his prime. I mean, he was absolutely horrendous with the Browns last year. There's no reason he should be on your fantasy football roster. It's just one of those guys who you look at the name, you say, oh, I know that name. He was good 8 years ago in 2018 or six years ago. It's just not someone you need to be rostering in fantasy football in the year 2024. But Carson Steele, the vast majority of people around Kansas City, as well as just like the Vegas sports books, they're thinking that Steele is going to be the primary early down rusher and take the goal line work, which is kind of the common sentiment. I mean, his rushing yards line is well ahead of anything that you can find for Pacheco right now. I don't even know if there's a line up for Pacheco's rushing yards just yet, but the expectation is that he is going to be the early down rusher and goal line back. And I think that he provides some more value than Pacheco. I think he would be the priority out of the two, especially just given that he is the more likely one to take those goal line snaps. I think the person, if either of these guys are going to have any fantasy value, it's going to be driven heavily by touchdowns. And we saw that with Jerick McKinnon a couple of years ago, that he just sun run touchdowns and was like a top 10 running back for a month and a half. So I think if any guy is going to have value, it'll be because they're finding the end zone at a high rate. And I believe that Carson Steele is the guy who has a greater chance to.
I agree with you. I mean, obviously, I expect Carson Steele to have even a bigger role with Pacheco being out for the next couple of weeks with the fractured, what was it, his fibula?
Yeah.
Fibula. So he's gonna be down for a while. It'll be very interesting to see how this Chiefs offense sort of gets remade without him in the picture, if you will. But Mike, as much as I want to continue to ask you fantasy questions, we're gonna hold them off until tomorrow. Because tomorrow, as you guys know, on the Sitdown Malik Wright Morning Show is what Fantasy Football Fridays, where we're joined by Mike and Steve Bradshaw, and we get you all set for week 3 of the NFL fantasy football to help win your fantasy leagues and so much more. You guys could follow Mike, right down here. You can see where his username is, but also his username is in the description as well. So make sure you guys give Mike a follow him for all the great work he does at TWSN as well as other outlets as well. And Mike, I believe we'll be seeing you tomorrow, my man.
Yep, I'll be back tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir, my man.
Appreciate you.
Have a good one, guys.
Yep, you too. So we appreciate Mike, as always, being a friend of the show. I want to switch on over here to UFC, but before I do, make sure you guys do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. Listen, I want to go on over to the UFC, and I want to talk about the return of Conor McGregor, or if the return will even ever happen. Conor McGregor made some interesting tweets the other day where he was talking about his interest of running for president of Ireland. And to me, that doesn't sound like a guy that has any interest in returning to the fight game. It doesn't sound like a guy that puts fighting at the forefront of his mind. That saying of, it's easy to wake up, jog, work out when you have an empty stomach.
Mhm.
You barely have a pot to piss in. It's harder when your belly's full. It's harder when you wake up to Gucci and Versace and you have everything that you could ever want at your disposal. Conor McGregor, I'm starting to believe he might not return to the UFC octagon.
Mhm.
I'm starting to believe that. He talked about potentially running for president of Ireland. And I'm like, if that's a guy that's potentially, planning to potentially make a presidential run, why would fighting ever be in your best interest? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Number one, I don't even know if he has the obviously has the popularity, but Conor's been in and out of the news for so much, man. I just don't know if going from fighter to bare knuckle fighting promotion to president is a realistic thing. And to me, it seems like he's all over the place.
Yeah.
One day he's doing a video talking about how the UFC's holding him back and he wants to fight. He needs to fight. Fighting's in his blood. And now he's talking about running for president of Ireland. It doesn't make sense. What are your thoughts?
I think that I would hope, and the fan in me wants to see McGregor back, and the fan in me wants to see McGregor go for a title shot, because the last I remember of McGregor is we were hoping that this dude could be in the title talks. Is this dude even capable of beating these other MMA fighters right now? We don't know, right? And I think the real comparison is look at how much stuff is taking his time away from actually training. The movie, The Roadhouse. You have bare knuckle. So he's now an owner, which means he's discussing many things, which means he's in meetings all the time, which also he's got his own liquor business. He's looking to run for president. I'm not even sure if this dude could beat a Michael Chandler right now. I'm not sure. And I think that's what is my takeaway from this is I don't know if he'll return Malik because what is he doing it for? It's got to be a big name fight at this point. So the only thing I could really see him returning for at this point could be, like a big name, like a Dustin Poirier, like a Nate Diaz. But man, like he's got so much other things on his mind. So even if he were to return, I don't think, and I'm going to make this very confident, I don't see him fighting or finishing his contract with the UFC. It's not going to happen. And if it happens, Conor McGregor, you prove me wrong. But there's just so much outside noise, and there's so much that we've rarely seen from the Conor McGregor that was actually fighting. He's got so many different things pulling at him, whether it's the presidency, he's doing so many things. And at this point, it's kind of sad to see from a fighting perspective. But first off, props to McGregor. He built this life. And if he walked away from it right now, he is completely set. But the struggle I have is don't go 50-50 on this. If you're fighting, bro, go for it. But it seems like his mind's not fully on fighting, even after he was scheduled for his fight with Michael Chandler. And he obviously hurt his toe and pulled out of the fight. And now he's doing so many different things. So it doesn't seem like he's fully all there and ready to fight.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame the guy. He also sold part of his share in the whiskey company, $600 million he got back for it. So like there's a lot of reasons to think that he might not fight again. But until we get an update on that, starting to believe that there's maybe the UFC dragging him along as well as the lack of interest in fights have, caused him to focus his attention on other things. And I guess we'll figure that out more as we go. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. I want to switch on over to our betting. Let's see if we can get you guys make some money tonight for Thursday night football. And to answer your question, Gary, he has 2 fights left on his UFC contract. There's been rumors swirling that pretty much they're using it as a bargaining chip to get even bigger deal in their next partnership with ESPN. But let's make some people some money, Daniel. Let's make some people some money. Let's talk about some of our favorite bets or your favorite bets for Thursday night football tonight. So the floor is yours, my man.
Beautiful. I'm going to run through 3 of these. And once again, these are props that I brought my notepad out for, and I wrote these down as soon as I first saw this game on Monday night. And once again, full props are going to be on the Patreon. Let me look at the Patriots side. Scrap the Jets for now. The Patriots side, there's a matchup that I absolutely love. The Jets defense, they run a ton of cover 3. And when they are in man-to-man, you got 2 very good outside boundary corners. Go look at what Sauce Gardner's done, right? He matched up with the #1 wide receiver. There's a guy on the Patriots that doesn't go on the outside. There's a guy on the Patriots that lives in the slot, and he feeds off of what Jacoby Brissett does well, and that's the short game. That's Demario Douglas. He's had a very rough start to the season. He's only had 2 receptions, I believe, in both games. But there was a press conference with the offense coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, and the quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, and they said, we need to get Demario more involved. This dude is beating people in the slot. We got to get him more involved. That was a conversation they had early in this week. And when you look at Demario's skill set, he's a quick slot guy. He is fast. He's explosive after the catch. And his line's at 24.5 receiving yards. When I look at the other guys on the roster, the only other guy I'd be confident in is Hunter Henry. But give me Demario Douglas. He's playing 75% and up of the snaps. So we know he's going to be on the field, and we know he's got the best matchup out of any wide receiver for the Patriots, and we need 25 receiving yards. So Demario Douglas, 25 plus receiving yards. And when I switch over to the Jets side of things, I've got to go with Garrett Wilson. I know our guy, Michael Hara, was discussing the Patriots defense, and they got a very good outside cornerback, Christian Gonzalez. But I went back and rewatched, Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show, and I went back and rewatched the press conference with the offense coordinator. And there is a sentiment that Garrett Wilson is a top 10 wide receiver. And there's a sentiment that Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson are on the same page that he is going to be peppered with targets. But Aaron Rodgers suggested, hey, I haven't been my full self yet. I'm still getting back in the groove of it. It's been a year since I played football, and I'm finally getting back in the groove of it. This is the get right game for Garrett Wilson. He goes out and has 100+ yards, and give me his over receptions, 5.5. He's had 6 and he's had 4, both 2 games that they were pretty much, at the fourth quarter, the first game, Garrett Wilson was pretty much out of the game. And last game, they were running the ball at the end of the game. So Garrett Wilson, 6 receptions. I also like his over 65 receiving yards. So those are my 2 favorite props I love. Receiver on the Jets, receiver on the Patriots. And if anything, I do like the Patriots to keep it close. Give me the Patriots spread +7. I think they keep it within a touchdown. The Jets can't break anybody open, and it's a divisional game. Prime time, Patriots +7.
So run through those players again that you have in their props, Daniel.
Demario Douglas, 25 receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Wilson, over 5.5 receptions. And I like his over 65 receiving yards. Not my official play, but I also like the Patriots +7 in this game.
Okay. Now, when I look at it, there are some props that I like for this game, and I feel like I've kind of fell back a little bit. You guys haven't heard from me too much. I've been kind of letting Daniel carry away with the betting advice, if you will. I like Alan Lazard prop is at 2.5 receiving. I think that they get him involved. He's a guy that obviously has a lot of rapport with Aaron Rodgers, and I still don't like the Patriots defensive back room.
Yeah.
I know some people are higher on them than I am. That's just not me though. I really want to pull the trigger on KJ Osborne right now for 2.5, but I just don't know if I could bring myself to do it. I'll tell you what, I will pull the trigger on Hunter Henry 3.5. Hunter Henry's reception prop is sitting at 3.5. I think he gets that. I think he hits that. I think he gets involved. I think he's the one position, that group that I could always feel confident that Jacoby Brissett is going to throw to, and that's a tight end spot, because it truly is his best friend in terms of having a reliable tight end. What do you think about Jalen Polk, though? Right? What do you think about Jalen Polk sitting at 1.5 receptions?
He's got to get more snaps. That's the one thing that concerns me, is over 1.5. I would be looking at his receiving yards, but I like it. I just don't love it. Just because
2 catches, right?
He should get 2 catches. That's the thing. And I could go look at some of his snap counts, but yeah.
All right. So I think I'll go with Hunter Henry over 34.5 receiving yards as well. Those are some of my favorite props for the game. I think the Jets win this one, but I do think it's going to be a competitive matchup. I think it's probably going to end in a field goal, probably like a game-winning field goal for them. I think the Patriots will be in it throughout. And I just think it's going to be a tough matchup. But again, if you look over to my right, you will see the QR code to join the TWSN Patreon. There you'll get all of our team's plays, and we have plays that come out literally every single day. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Patreon. We don't have UFC picks this week because there's no UFC this week, but we'll be back next week. We'll still have college football picks this weekend, and obviously NFL on tap, and tonight, Thursday night football. So we appreciate you guys for supporting. We appreciate you guys for making the Sit Down Malik Wright Morning Show a part of your morning routine. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. as we get you all geared up for week 3 of NFL action and fantasy football Fridays. But until then, remember, there's only one way you should be waking up, watching sports, talking sports, and that is the right way. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.